So I think it's time for our weekly live online session. So we'll just make a start at this time. And as always, I'll be providing a recording of this session as well for anyone who wants to join later. So I'm joining you today from actually a little bit of a different location. Like I shared on the announcements, one of the things we have going on this week is organize STEM FOI Career Connections Day. So I'm kind of on the road. I do try to make sure that I offer still my regular office hours, both online and also in terms of these live online sessions. But there might be a little bit more delay with getting back to you. But I think that it is still important that we look through the material that we have planned for this live online session. So this week has really marked first week when we get to look at a body system in a little bit of a different way from what we've done in the past in terms of reviewing the basic concepts. This week really is diving into the meat of the topic. This is a chance for us to talk about integumentary system. An integumentary system, of course, as you know at this point, refers to the skin, but also the associated structures with the skin. So we'll have a look of various different kind of exocrine glands related with the skin. And we'll also talk about, for example, nails and the hair. So lots of interesting content for us to cover. And as always, this live online session is meant kind of as a nutshell version of the key points of this weekly material, but you'll find full-length lecture videos with supplementary material on your Canvas course. As always, I had a little bit of a plan outlined for us for today, but again, I think that we're today in the sake of keeping things moving on. If we had more attendance, we would probably do a little bit more of a dialogue, but we're just going to dive in right away to looking at the weekly homework. So this week, there's two elements that are not going to be too surprising for you from the weekly homework. We're looking at the chapter quiz and also chapter practice anatomy as it relates to the integumentary system. But an assignment that's probably a little new from what we've seen in the past is going to be food for thought assignment. These food for thought assignments are short mini essays that allow you to dive into more of a clinical relevance or look in other ways. How does the subject matter that we're discussing about, what are the finer nuances of that? So I'm looking for about 1 paragraph length in terms of an answer, whether it's 4 or 5 sentences, that's up to you. And all of these assignments are due at the end of the week. So let's review a little bit of the key content of what we're going to be looking at this week. So one of the things that we see is that your body is lined by various different membranes. And it doesn't just have to be the membranes that form the outer boundaries of your body. It could be also boundaries that form inner boundaries in your body. So in addition to the skin, we have, for example, mucous membranes in our nasal cavity, oral cavity, lining digestive cavity. We have a membrane there, and from our urinary system, there's membranes, and so on. All of these membranes serve to ensure that what's supposed to stay on one side stays on that side, and what's supposed to stay on the other side stays on that side, but also do controlled passage of the materials. So we're seeing that these membranes are really dependent on where we are seeing them and what their main function is. And I think that it sometimes surprises students when they realize that we do not just need an outer layer as in terms of the skin, but we also need a layer in terms of protecting the rest of the body from these openings to the external world. So our main focus today is on the cutaneous membrane, which is basically your skin. And what we notice is that this is a dry membrane that forms the outermost protective boundary of the body. And as you can see on the picture on this screen, a cutaneous membrane is a multi-layered membrane, and it is made of these squamous shaped cells, and they are produced at the basal membrane level. And as they move further away from that membrane, those cells then don't stay alive anymore, and they also get keratinized, which forms that really barrier that keeps, for example, the water outside our body when we're going to the swimming, so it doesn't just rush in. So very important regulatory layer that helps with that purpose. One of the things that often I find fascinating to think about and I talk about with my students in quite extent is that we really do have a lot of variation in how skin can appear when it comes to the characteristics of the skin. But in addition to that, we're seeing that skin can tell a lot about the individual's state of health. So we can look at a patient and simply by looking of the some telltale signs of their skin, get a lot of information what's going on with their health status. Other thing that I often talk with my students is about the fact that of course, it sounds more dramatic and more glamorous to be a neurosurgeon or a cardiac surgeon. So sometimes my students ask, why is it valuable to become a dermatologist working with the skin? And the answer that we have kind of came to over time as we've been discussing this in the class really has to do with how much your skin has an effect on also on the quality of your life in terms of how you feel about yourself, how willing you might be to engage into new situations, new settings. So really helping a patient who might have a dermatological issue, it's not just about dealing with that particular clinical issue as such, but it's the other impacts that providing that care might have for their well-being. Let's have a look at the skin and the structure of the skin a little bit. And here as a reminder, we will also be talking today a little bit about the hair, a little bit about the nails, and a little bit about the related glands. And if we look at the skin, skin is made of a few different layers, and the epidermis is the outermost layer of the skin. This layer is made of keratinized stratified squamous epithelia, like we discussed earlier on. And really the keratin is going to be crucial here in giving the protective functions and properties to the skin. We can divide epidermis into really 4 or 5 different layers depending where we're looking at, and these layers are known as a strata. So we have stratum basalis, stratum spinosum, stratum glanurosum, stratum lucidum. We only find this layer in thick skin. And finally, stratum corneum. So a few different layers for us to consider. And again, your lecture videos will provide more detailed information about those. The actual, I guess I would say, the real part of the skin that forms the hide in when we produce letter objects. So the meaty part of the skin is going to be known as dermis. This is very strong, very flexible connective tissue, and it's rich in nerve supply, blood vessel supply, lymphatic vessel supply, and also houses the glands. Yes, those glands do penetrate to their ducts through the epidermis, but it is within the dermis where those glands are located. And dermis can be divided further into 2 layers, to our papillary layer and our reticular layer. Finally, we do have hypodermis layer. This is what we know as our subcutaneous tissue. And technically speaking, hypodermis is not part of the skin, but because it is so associated, we often do want to review that as well. This is largely adipose tissue. This is responsible for anchoring the skin to the subsequent underlying tissues. And here I have a microscopic image to really bring home the point that we saw earlier on, that not only are these layers in our diagrams, but they are found actually in real life. So here you can see the different skin layers and how distinctly different they are on a microscope view. I believe this is just a traditional H&E stain of skin or layers through the skin. So very, very good illustration in terms of that. Another thing that I wanted to mention is, of course, our color of the skin. And color of the skin varies significantly from one individual to another, but color of the skin can also tell us a lot about that individual's health status, their lifestyle, and so on. So the color of your skin is a kind of a combination of multiple factors working together. And the first factor of these that I wanted to talk about is the melanin. Melanin is a pigment that can vary from yellow to brown or even all the way to the black. And this melanin pigment is produced by melanocytes within the skin. In addition, we can have a pigment known as keratin. This pigment is often seen as it relates to some of the dietary materials that we can consume. For example, certain vegetables. So if you eat a lot of carrots, for example, for an extended period of time, that would tend to have an effect also on the skin color. In addition, our skin color is also partially because we can see through the skin of the contribution of the blood and blood vessels underneath. So we can see the reddish undertone through the hemoglobin that we see on the red blood cells, the main component. And now it becomes important, are those red blood cells and hemoglobin in them loaded with oxygen, which would give more of a bright reddish color, whereas if it's less loaded with oxygen, we end up seeing this darker purplish color. So again, the individual's cardiovascular system status can also contribute to the skin color that we're able to see. Obviously, there's many different indications of diseases that we can see as we look at the skin color. Cyanosis, very typical for low oxygenation of the tissues, hemoglobin. So you end up seeing especially extremities, lips, fingertips, things like that, turning more bluish in color. The redness of erythema is really when we have that flush of red, whether it's due to fever, hypertension, inflammation, or allergy. So again, many reasons why we might see redness of the skin. If we lose the color of the skin, we might talk about pallor. This is often due to the drop in blood pressure. It could be due to an emotional response like fear or anger, but it could be also a sign of individual being anemic. Talking about other colors of the skin, other factors that contribute there, jaundice would be one, kind of giving a yellow color, often associated with liver not working correctly. Also importantly, we see that the eye whites tend to turn yellow in patients who are navigating with jaundice and major liver issues. We do have others like the bronzine that can tell about us about the hormone levels. Bruises obviously are bleeding underneath the skin, so you see the blood packing there, and then that healing process that gives the distinct colors at different stages of the healing of a bruise. Well, I also promised that we would mention the glands quickly. So sebaceous glands are our oil glands. Typically, we see these at the roots of the hair. So they are responsible for kind of ensuring that we produce that oiliness for the hair. This prevents hair from being dry and brittle and kind of strengthens in that sense. Oil also serves ensuring that the skin remains elastic, kind of nice, humid, dry air skin that doesn't have any oil on the surface will actually have a risk of that skin getting damaged as well. Oils from the sebaceous glands also play important role as antibacterial and antimicrobial functions, forming this barrier on the skin. We in fact often see, for example, for people who dye their hair, that we recommend that before you do that harsh chemical treatment, you let the oil to build up to the scalp, because that's going to help us to prevent of damaging that layer. We also have our sweat glands, and sweat glands play an important role in those homeostatic mechanisms, for example, regulating your body temperature, but also in terms of providing that barrier that protects your body by releasing those secretions on the surface of the skin. What's noteworthy sometimes that comes up in my discussions with students is that sweat itself doesn't smell. It's really the bacterial activity on sites where there's humidity as a result of the sweat, what we're actually smelling. But pure sweat itself is odorless. I also wanted to highlight a muscle, probably the smallest muscle in your body, known as erector pili. Erector pili is attached to each hair follicle, and it's responsible for giving you your goosebumps. So that's going to be the topic of your food for thought assignment this week. It's responsible for lifting the hair, and we'll explore on that assignment many reasons why that might be the case, how that might be beneficial for us. Keeping onwards, we can look at the hair and production of the hair from the hair follicle on many levels, and we see that there's a rich cell division process taking place at the hair root, and then as those cells divide, those are not living cells anymore, so the hair is dead material. That's obviously important. I guess that we would see that, for example, haircut would be otherwise very different experience. I also want you to look a little bit this week about the nails and structure of the nails. Nail is highly keratinized tissue. We're seeing that there's really two purposes for the nails. They protect the fingertips or ends of the toes, so we don't injure them if we hit them, but they also allow that fine grip, that fine motor control, which is a worthwhile role for the skin or for the nail structure to pay attention to. Finally, I wanted to finish off by talking a little bit about one injury type, so skin burns. We have something known as rule of nines, which allows us to divide the body into 11 regions, each one representing 9%, except the area immediately around genitalia representing 1%. And this allows us really to estimate the extent of a burn or an burn injury. So important information that we can get from that as we assess how severe the situation is and how to approach the treatment of the patient's situation. I wanted to finish off by mentioning a little bit about skin cancers. These are the most common cancers in the humans. And really, we know that the excessive UV radiation is one important contributing factor to skin cancers. So whether you're exposed in direct sunlight or you use tanning beds, we do want to limit that UV radiation amount, and we want to make sure that it is safe amount, because that does cause those mutations on a DNA level and can lead into cancerous tissue development. With the cancers, it is important to draw a distinction between benign cancers, which are basically cell division that's localized and doesn't spread or hasn't spread, and malignant cancers, where that's a cancer that on normal cell division spreads to the other parts of the body. And that really brings us to the end of what I wanted to highlight on this video. As I said, it is our first week of really diving into the lecture material. I hope that you find the material interesting. I hope that you find the assignments interesting, and I look forward to reading your want more assignments and providing individualized feedback on those. Like I mentioned at the very beginning of this video, we do have today Career Connections Day. So if anyone is around and would like to join, learn about different career options, it's definitely available for you and worthwhile to pop in. I might see some of you during that as well. Well, I hope you have a very good week. I appreciate the great work that I see coming in. And as always, I am here to help. Even if today is a little bit unusual in terms of my availability, I do want you to know that you're very much here supported. So you just need to let me know what you need from me, and I'm here to deliver that. Let's make it another great week, and I look forward to hearing your and reviewing your work as the week goes on. Until our next meeting, bye.